Have you ever sat in that heavy silence at a family dinner? Here on Human Stories, we retell those moments, honest, everyday, sometimes controversial. Every story is a mirror. Subscribe, join the conversation, and maybe find a little healing. Briarfield House looks like it was designed to make people whisper. Glass conservatory, river light, a string quartet under a fig tree, every detail curated so a camera never has to search for beauty. I've never cared for rooms that pose for their guests, but tonight I am one of them. I'm Nora Hart, 68. Mother of the bride holding a flute of champagne while the Becketts toast themselves. When the band pauses between Cole Porter and Sinatra, the room turns silver quiet. Faces tilt toward the dais. A river wind lifts the edge of my silk jacket, the one my mother wore to a courthouse wedding in 1959. It isn't couture. It fits like memory. Across the floral arch, my daughter leans toward her new mother-in-law. The arch smells like gardenias and fresh money. Lena's profile is perfect, the angle she learned on campaign shoots, chin-clean pearls just visible, smile not quite a smile. Vivian Beckett keeps her chin higher. Old family posture. I'm not trying to eavesdrop. The music is thinned and conversation like perfume travels farther than decency. I hear my name first spoken the way people say a brand of grocery bread. Mom is. Fine, Lena tells Vivian, soft enough for most ears, loud enough for mine. She lives small. That's not a criticism. She won't ever be this. A flutter takes in the chandelier, the donors, the laughter that never checks bank balances. She's content where she is. Contentment can be a costume, Vivian replies. Pearls steady. Some people wear it to avoid ambition. I look at my glass. Bubbles climb. In the window, the Hudson lies black and obliging, carrying off what falls in. I think of the years I drove carpools and graded papers on bleachers of nights. Calvin and I ran numbers at the kitchen table until the mortgage behaved of the morning. I packed Lena's good blazer and told her to keep her shoulders down when she told the truth and up when she needed to look like she was. My phone vibrates once, habit, not message. I slide it out, thumb over the recorder app. Calvin Hart, it says. I recorded him on a March afternoon when the light made his hospital room look honest. He asked for the thing that makes the dead cling, a promise. If she forgets who raised her, he said. Breath ragged but eyes smart, I left you words. Use them, not to hurt, to steady. Across the glass, Lena laughs and touches Vivian's arm the way publicists touch donors. Thomas, my new son-in-law, has the Beckett jaw and the Beckett carefulness. He glances toward Lena as if to confirm he is wearing husband correctly. A ripple passes the crowd. The best man clears his throat. Air gathers. The quartet lifts bows. I could let it proceed, let toasts stack like crystal, let the night close over what I heard and what I know. There is a version of me who smiles for the camera and pockets the hurt for later. I adjust the cuff of my jacket. The silk is cool like a hand on a fevered forehead. My mother wore it when she decided not to ask permission. Ladies and gentlemen, the best man begins. The voice has that champagne timbre money buys in prep schools. To love to legacy. Legacy means money in rooms like this. Sometimes it also means story. Mine begins with the way the floor carries sound. When people at the dais laugh, the boards relay the joke to the margins. I'm standing in those margins. If I move 3 steps, I will be in the light and phones will lift because that is what they do when a scene announces itself. I don't move, not yet. The promise isn't a fuse, it's a compass. I want my hand steady. Lena finds my eyes. For a breath, we are back in a school gym, she, in a wrinkled band uniform, me with safety pins in my pocket. The look she gives me now is efficient, affectionate enough for photographs and already turning back towards center. Something in me settles. Vivian raises a flute 1/2 inch higher than everyone else. She has learned to make 1/2 inches into hierarchies. She doesn't look unkind. She looks busy with the job of being herself. I won't take that job from her. I won't let her do mine. Mom Thomas mouths from the head table. I lift my glass and nod. Calvin used to say a room tells you its terms. Briarfield's terms are simple, admire. Comply, do not make a scene. I press my thumb to the phone until the lock wakes and the red waveform waits. It isn't anger that rises. It is geography. The distances I crossed, no one here will measure between part-time paychecks, between nights when the radiator knocked, and mornings when it finally warmed, between what Lena needed and what I could give. Small life, my daughter said, as if size were a synonym for value. The best man lifts his glass to the newlyweds. The room lifts with him. I lift mine too. I hear the quartet inhale. I promised I tell the phone, not loudly, not for spectacle. Promises don't care about volume. I don't look at anyone when my thumb moves. The screen glows, the track opens, and Calvin's voice, patient, walks into a room that has never met him. Calvin's voice travels through Briarfield the way a lighthouse cuts through fog, steady, unhurried, sure of what it is. People turn not because they know him, but because a tone like his belongs to someone who once ran a household and did the hard arithmetic of an ordinary life. The quartet lowers bows. The waveform crawls across my screen. 3 weeks earlier, there was no conservatory, no fig tree, no expensive hush. There was my office at the community archive, fluorescent lights, a map of the Hudson, printed in 1974, and a box of postcards from a summer camp that shut down the year Nixon resigned. I was cataloging the way small towns remember themselves when my phone lit up with a number that introduced itself as Senior Care Transitions. Ms. Hart, a woman whose voice sounded like a sweater. I'm Jenna, a placement consultant. Your daughter mentioned you might be exploring next steps. We can guide families through the maze, evaluate options, protect assets. Which daughter is that? I asked, though I have only one. Lena, she said, confident the answer could not sting me. She cares very much about keeping you safe. The archive holds other people's paper gilt loans, paid and unpaid grainy photographs of parades. I wrote the number on a sticky note and placed it under a photo of the old high school. What is the first step? I asked. We start with a needs assessment, Jenna said, then a financial plan. Many communities offer lifetime care in exchange for asset restructuring. Done right, it's a relief. Done. Done right for whom? A pause for everyone. After we hung up, I sat a minute and listened to the building breathing through its vents. Safety is a generous word. It can mean grab bars and wide doorways. It can mean someone else makes sure the pills come on time. It can also mean a life smoothed until it forgets it once had edges. At lunch, Lena chose a cafe where the flatware is intentionally heavy. She talked about a charity gala as if it were a weather pattern. When the salads arrived, she laid her hand on mine and said as if practicing a line, I want you to feel taken care of. I feel taken care of when I'm consulted, I said. She flushed a child caught with a marker and a white wall. Of course. There are wait lists. Cedar Grove it's lovely. How do you know? Vivian toured it after her friend moved in. There's a piano in the atrium, Lena said, which is the sort of sentence people produce when they have not yet asked the right questions. Then I'll ask, I said. When you teach history long enough, you learn the way power leaves fingerprints. It is in how forms are titled, in which boxes require ink, and whose signature must stand twice. I called Rosa, who started at the library the year I stopped grading exams, and started indexing other people's paper lives. Bring coffee, she said. We'll go hunting. The county clerk's office smells like Scotch tape and old carpet. We asked for what is public and were given what people hope no one requests. Cedar Grove appeared in meeting minutes with the town zoning board 5 years ago. Sprinkler code variances and elegant rendering with sunlight that looks contractual. In the state database, it lived under another name, as places often do. Cedar Grove Operating LLC. That was attached to an organization with a perfectly gentle title, Everstead Living Group. Rosa clicked with the wrist of a person who plays piano at night. Look here, she said, and opened a PDF. No one designs for reading pages of tiny type, the kind of file a regulator produces when a thing has been just not quite right. Most lines were routine. Then a paragraph unfurled itself, the facility's asset protection counseling, how staff introduced the topic at moments of vulnerability, how referral partners were compensated according to outcome. Outcome, I said. Placement, Rosa said. Signed agreements, transfer complete. We printed the relevant pages, drew boxes around phrases that wanted a red pencil. I called the Better Business Bureau, which even when it can do nothing, knows how to catalog complaint flavor. High-pressure presentation after funeral, one read. Told we might lose the spot unless we decided that day, another said. Dates, amounts, the small humiliations of hurry. Rosa pulled her lip between her teeth. They sell comfort the way car lots sell peace of mind, she said. Finance department with pastoral lighting. In the archive, a man named Harold comes in Tuesdays to look for himself in microfilm. He could not find his wedding announcement in 1962 because it ran in a different paper. He has told me the story of how he realized that 4 times. In the telling, he is always patient. On the way home, I stopped for milk and ran into his niece, who told me her aunt had been at Cedar Grove. It's pretty, she said, and they do good things, but the fees kept multiplying. Community fee, transition fee, dining upgrade. They made it sound like the cost of convenience, the way airlines charge for legroom. Lena sent a link to an intake form, so you can check it out yourself. She texted and attached a photo of a sunlit corridor that could as easily be a hotel. I clicked and scrolled. The privacy policy was thorough to a fault. The power of attorney language was not on the form, which is where I would have put it if I wanted to look honest. It lived in a separate packet I could not access without creating an account. Rosa, I said when she answered, let's talk to a human. We drove to Cedar Grove on a Thursday that smelled like cut grass. A welcome associate with perfect hair introduced herself as Molly and offered water glasses that felt like they had been individually polished. The atrium did have a piano. A retired professor was working through Debussy with concentration. The place was by any standard lovely. "We tailor to the resident," Molly said, leading us down a hallway so wide it seemed to promise dignity, from book clubs to woodworking to transportation to appointments. "What about the financial onboarding?" I asked. Molly's smile left her mouth and sat on her face. "We can do a no-stress consultation," she said. "We found families appreciate clarity." "Do referral partners receive compensation?" I asked. "Sometimes," she said, "for the time they spend supporting families." "Do you ask about wills?" "We ask about durable powers of attorney," she said. "It's best practice." "Best for whom?" "Continuity," she said, and the tour moved on. We stood in a model suite where the bedspread looked ironed by an invisible mother. Rosa knocked on the bathroom tile with her knuckle. "Good bones," she said, which I translated as the building would not be the problem. On the way out, a woman from the business office pressed a folder into my hands. "You can read at home," she said, as if she were lending me a library book. In the parking lot, Rosa opened it on the hood of my car. Inside were pages with titles chosen by people who pay attention to where the eye lands: resident, peace of mind, agreement, continuity of care, enrollment, authorized, agent checklist. The words irrevocable and discretion appeared precisely where fear makes people stop parsing. "Not illegal," Rosa said, "but designed." A week later, an email arrived from a paralegal at Bellingham and Pratt. The subject line was "Draft, please review," and the body addressed me by the name of a woman I have never been. Attached was a durable power of attorney financial with an agent line already filled, Lena Hart, and a springing clause that would wake on the certification of 2 physicians. The final page included a sticky note scan. "Once notarized, we can expedite the Cedar Grove transfer J." I called the number in the signature. "You've misaddressed a client document," I said. "Oh," the voice was young and earnest. "So sorry, wrong Nora. We're handling several families this month. So much need." "Who is the right Nora?" I asked. "I can't disclose client identities," she said. "You understand." "I do," I said. "I also understand blind carbon copy." Silence. "We'll correct our records," she said. "When Calvin was sick, he kept a ledger we fought about until I admitted it made him feel like himself. He wrote what he could do that day, walk to the porch, read 2 pages, eat 1 egg, and drew a line through what he managed. When the oncologist talked in months, he talked in chores. On a rain morning that smelled like pennies, he said, "You read paper like it owes you truth. Don't stop when I go." At the archive, a new donation arrived, boxes from a shuttered law office. The lawyer's heirs wanted the space in the garage more than they wanted his career. I opened a carton and found a folder labeled Elder General. Inside were articles clipped when I still graded essays, guardianship in the color of money when help becomes harvest. The headlines were dramatic. The content was careful. It spoke of families that duct-taped together a plan of others who treated age like a problem to manage with signatures. I took a walk down by the river. A tugboat pushed a barge upriver, indifferent as a fact. On the bench, a teenager showed a friend how to switch out a camera lens without letting dust settle on the glass. Precision passed between their hands, the kind you learn by doing something wrong once. I sat until the sun changed from coin to bruise and thought about a piano in an atrium. A woman whose job was to make families feel they had done the right thing. A daughter who liked to solve things with a pen. At home, I spread the folder from Cedar Grove on my kitchen table and used a yellow highlighter on what might trip someone later. I made a copy of the paralegal's email and slid it behind the toaster in case sent items ever stops being simple. I printed the public documents Rosa and I pulled with the gray stamps of agencies who exist to notice. I labeled a slim binder Calvin, not because he wrote any of it, but because he would have liked the order. 2 days before Briarfield, Lena stopped by with a garment bag and a kind of brightness that works better in daylight. "Try this," she said, and unzipped a dress the color of a robin's egg. "Vivian says the palette will photograph better." "It's beautiful," I said. "It isn't me." She exhaled like a tired soprano. "Mom, people will be watching." "They always have been," I said, and smoothed the silk of the jacket I would wear anyway. When she left, I texted Rosa a photo of the binder. She sent back a thumbs up made of punctuation marks because she refuses to use images to say what letters can do. The morning of the wedding, I pressed the jacket my mother wore to a courthouse where marriage lasted 40 years. I added a handkerchief with a stitch I made when I was 20 and thought heirlooms could be sewn into being. I tucked my phone in the inside pocket where a man once kept cigarettes. In the outer pocket, I slid what paper cannot argue with dates, names, and how one thing led to another. By the time the quartet eased from Cole Porter into Sinatra, I knew the shape of the room and the shape of the story. A placement consultant who used the future like leverage, a facility with a piano and a well-lit business office, a set of forms that shaved choices into something portable, a daughter who meant well loudly, a voice memo I had promised to honor. At Briarfield, the chairs were arranged as if angles could prevent surprise. The floor still carried sound to the margins. I stood where I could hear everything and be mistaken for scenery. When Calvin spoke, he did not clear his throat or apologize. He said my name the way a person says home, and the room which had been performing itself all night decided to listen. Calvin's voice is the kind that makes even a chandelier listen. Not loud, he never needed volume to be heard, but shaped for rooms that respect plain talk. Nora, he says, and my name lands like a coat on a chair. If you're hearing me, it means you've been made small in a room that asks you to be smaller. Don't bargain with that. If our girl is standing with people who confuse expense with character, do not let them measure you for convenience. If they start aiming your future at a place with a polished piano and a quiet business office, remember the ink is permanent and convenience is rarely neutral. Ask the questions. Make them answer you. You are not a problem to be managed. The quartet has the decency to be still. Somewhere to my left, a champagne cork gives up its seat softly. Vivian's smile holds, but her eyes for one beat look like a person who has unexpectedly heard her own footsteps. Lena touches her pearls the way she used to touch her throat before a performance. Calvin says one more thing. Something only a man who logged every furnace repair on an index card would think to say. When a paper needs your name, make sure the line deserves it. Then the waveform stops and the room exhales because it remembers how. I pocket the phone. To Lena and Thomas I say, and clink my glass with the table nearest me. No speech, no lesson, nothing for the videographer to splice into a reel with tasteful music. The best man recovers. The quartet finds Sinatra again. People decide it is easier to believe they have misunderstood me than to change the story they purchased with deposits and coordination calls. Lena avoids me until the bouquet toss, then kisses my cheek like a truce, and returns to a circle of friends who admire her for her efficiency. Thomas squeezes my shoulder, a pressure that says nothing and several things at once. Vivian floats by later and says in a tone that could pass for gracious if you weren't standing this close, "How resourceful to include your husband tonight." Calvin always liked to party, I say. 2 mornings after Briarfield, Lena chooses a bistro with chairs designed to keep people from lingering. She arrives in flats and a cardigan that reads softer than it feels. I didn't know about the recording, she says, before the water arrives. It surprised people. It wasn't for people, I say. For me, then. She folds the napkin once, then again. You embarrassed Vivian. I played a message from my husband, I say. The rest is gravity. A server sets down 2 coffees and a slice of apple cake Lena hasn't ordered. She ignores the cake. Cedar Grove has an opening, she says too lightly. It's unusual. We should decide quickly. Decide what? That you'll move while there's space. She smiles like a nurse on a poster. It's close to us. They have transportation to the hospital network and a library cart. Do they also have a business office with forms that wake up when 2 physicians sign a paragraph, I ask? And referral arrangements that pay consultants after families agree to peace of mind? She flinches as if my words have edges. Mom, no one is trying to trick you. We're trying to take care of you. I'm not a porch plant, I say. You don't move me because the sun is better over there. She exhales. We all want the same thing. I doubt that, I say, but we can find out. The next time I see her, she's flanked by staging. The Colonial on Orchard Lane has a foyer made for seasonal wreaths and holiday bows. Tonight, the hallway smells like lemon oil and restraint. The living room has been set like a photograph sofa, centered document folders stacked in the middle, a tray with water and glasses to suggest civility. Thomas stands at the mantel with the posture of someone trying to give his wife room. Vivian is already seated, pearls and posture in their places. A man I do not know occupies the chair closest to the folders. He looks like a person hired to speak as little as possible. Mom, Lena says, voice pitched to friendly. Thanks for coming. Dorothy, Vivian begins, then corrects herself. Nora, we're glad you're here. We've been concerned. Mrs. Hart, the man says, rising halfway. Ethan Pratt. I help families organize the necessary documents. I take the chair opposite the couch, the one that allows me to see the street through the front window. Outside, the block is quiet in that curated way people purchase with good insulation and a respectable distance between mailboxes. Lena folds her hands on her knees. We made a list, she says, as if this is an errand. Power of attorney healthcare, proxy asset management, things that will make everything smoother. For whom I ask. For everyone, she says and hears herself. For you. So you won't have to worry. Mr. Pratt flips open the top folder with the nice weight of a person who appreciates paper. The first page is a letter on Bellingham and Pratt letterhead with a logo that wants to be trusted. Underneath are tabs with names that sound like assurances, continuity, authorization, enrollment. Vivian pours water as if she's hosting tea. We're simply trying to relieve you of burdens, she says. Continuity, Mr. Pratt says, as if reading off a cruise brochure means decisions can be made efficiently in the event of an emergency. Our agency clause activates upon certification by 2 independent physicians. My binder fits on my lap like it knew it would sit there. Calvin, says the spine. At the right moment, I lay it on the coffee table and open to the page where the words, agency clause live in a paragraph that looks harmless until it isn't. 2 independent physicians, I say. Selected by whom? The family, Mr. Pratt says, in consultation. With who is considered family, I say, and let my gaze land briefly on Vivian. He clears his throat. Typically the next of kin. Which form puts Vivian's name within reach of the pen, I ask. None, Lena says quickly. Mom, no one is trying to take anything from you. Then why does your paralegal think a woman named Nora has agreed to a durable financial power of attorney that lists you as agent? I slide across the misaddressed email printout with the sticky note scan that says expedite. The room pulls back an inch. That was a mistake, Lena says, color high. It was meant for someone else. A mistake with the exact agent line you've been practicing, I say. Thomas leans forward, elbows on his knees, and reads. He reads the way I've seen him look at a contract silently with attention that doesn't need to prove itself. He reaches for the other stack. What are these? He asks Pratt. Standard, Pratt says. Peace of mind agreements. They call them that because irrevocable assignment tests poorly, I say. I slide out the state PDF, Rosa and I boxed in yellow. This is the regulatory language. Asset protection counseling delivered at moments of vulnerability. Outcome-based referral compensation. Continuity of care enrollment contingent on a retitling schedule. Vivian lifts her chin 1 degree. You've done a great deal of research, she says. I used to grade sophomores, I say. This is kinder. We're not the enemy, Vivian says, and for the first time there is a hairline crack where certainty has always lived in her voice. We want Lena to have peace of mind. All of us do better when the older generation is secure. Security isn't the same as sequestration, I say, and peace of mind shouldn't be purchased with someone else's signature. Lena's voice shortens. Mom, enough. You're making us sound like villains. I'm making you sound like people who thought urgency would keep me from reading, I say. Mr. Pratt lifts a pen, then sets it down the universal sign for realizing he is not the protagonist of the moment. No one is forcing anyone, he says quietly. We're offering a framework. What you're offering, I say, is a set of levers that work best when someone is tired. Thomas looks up from the complaint summaries. He has the expression of a man who just discovered the fine print lives somewhere other than where he was told to look. Viv, he says, turning to his mother without an honorific. Did you know about the referral fees? Everyone compensates. Everyone, she says, recovering her balance. It's how services coordinate. After the funeral, I say, tapping the line. After the hospital. After the night no one slept. That is when you coordinate. Vivian's mouth makes a small, neat shape that might be anger if she allowed the word. Lena laces and unlaces her fingers. You're making this ugly, she says, and I can hear the fatigue beneath the offense. It was already ugly, I say, but softer now, because fatigue is honest even when it's pointed in the wrong direction. I'm here to make it legible. We let the quiet work. A car drifts by outside the kind of slow that means a person has nowhere urgent to be. Somewhere upstairs, the house adjusts itself, old wood answering its own questions. Mr. Pratt closes his folder. Mrs. Hart, he says, professional spine returning, we can pause. It's your right to take these home to review or to decline outright. That's generous, I say. I've brought mine. I push the binder an inch forward enough to claim the space I occupy. Here's my healthcare proxy already executed, naming Rosa as the person who will tell a doctor whether I prefer orange juice or apple juice when I'm cranky. Here's my will updated last winter because snow kept me inside. Here's a letter to myself about what home means. None of this is a secret, and none of it includes involuntary relocation disguised as compassion. Lena blinks. She can read a footnote at 40 paces, I say. Thomas shifts a sound that is not quite relief. So there is a plan, he says to the room, to himself. There is a person, I say, with a plan. Vivian lifts her glass of water and discovers it has somehow emptied itself. I must say, she says, a genteel blade, your tone is unhelpful. Your tone, I say, is practiced. We sit without moving for a minute. I watch the sheen on the coffee table, the sort of gloss that shows every fingerprint. In the reflection, the pen Mr. Pratt set down is a small black hyphen. I think of Calvin and the way he would have underlined it lightly once. Lena is the one who breaks the stillness. She turns to Mr. Pratt. Could you give us the room, she asks, and it sounds less like a command than like a person handing back a tool she does not know how to use. He gathers his folders without offense and leaves through the foyer with a professional quiet. Vivian stands. I'll be in the kitchen, she says, and adds before she goes. Thomas, don't let this become theater. It is both a warning and a wish. The living room is smaller without an audience. Thomas leans forward, elbows on his knees again. Lena presses her palms together and rests them against her lips, a gesture so familiar I can see the 6th grader who did it before an algebra test. I hate that you think I'm after your money, she says, words pressed thin by effort. I don't, I say. I think you are after the absence of fear. She closes her eyes, opens them. I don't want to wake up every morning wondering if you fell or left the stove on or... She shakes her head. I don't want to be constantly braced. Then don't, I say. Bracing doesn't prevent anything, it only tires you. Thomas looks at Lena, and in that look is a file of small histories. Airport pickups, takeout cartons, late work nights that forgot to end. He reaches across the gap between them and takes her hand. It surprises her. I won't sign, I say, because some sentences need to exist out loud. Not a power of attorney that waits in a drawer like a trap. Not a transfer that turns my life into a line item. I will not live where paperwork is the price of company. Lena nods once without lifting her head as if a verdict has landed, and she is adjusting to the weather of it. I need something from you, I say. Her eyes rise guarded. When a place calls itself peace of mind, I say hear what it would cost. When a person says we should decide quickly, ask who benefits from speed. When you want to care for me, ask me what that looks like. And if we disagree, she asks, not combative, just precise. We'll argue, I say. In my living room, with bad coffee, without a notary, a corner of her mouth learns how to be amused. It isn't a smile, it's an ability. Vivian returns without entering, hovering like a weather system in the doorway. Is everyone settled? She asks brisk. Enough, I say. Thomas stands. I'll walk you out, he says, and no one stops him. The foyer smells faintly of the lemon oil they used earlier, and the rug holds the day's footprints the way decent rugs do, not as stains as records. Thomas opens the door. The porch light makes a soft circle on the walkway. I didn't know about the email, he says. I know, I say. I should have asked more questions, he says, and doesn't hide the part of himself that wants to be better at this than he is. Then ask, I say. People tell you things when they aren't busy protecting a story. We stand one more moment looking at nothing in particular, just a quiet street, a mailbox with very neat numbers, a world that stays put when it can. He squeezes my shoulder again, not as a placeholder this time, and goes back inside. In the car, I sit until the dashboard clock clicks forward. The binder rides on the passenger seat, heavy enough to stay put, if I brake hard, light enough to carry upstairs without thinking about it. My jacket still holds a trace of gardenia, as if Briarfield followed me home out of habit. At my apartment, the radiator knocks once, as if to check whether I've come back. I put the binder on the kitchen table and line up the papers by size, which is a thing Calvin and I used to do when we were pretending we liked chores. I put water on for tea and stand at the sink while it warms. The window over the sink has a view of a brick wall that looks handsome in the rain and serviceable in every other weather. Tonight it is a wall. Steam rises. The kettle finds its voice. I turn off the flame and carry the mug to the table. The room is small enough that the tea and the papers and the chair I pull out all belong to one arrangement. I sit and the chair answers, and the quiet that arrives isn't empty. It has weight and edges and a temperature. It holds. By morning, the binder isn't heavier, only honest. I make tea, open the window a crack, and let the radiator argue with March. The apartment smells like paper and lemon cleaner. When I sit, the chair answers me the way old chairs do, once decisively. Thomas calls just after 9. Is this a good time, he asks, as if time were a thing you borrow in clean shoes. It is. I read everything again, he says. Twice. I should have done that before we asked you to come over. He waits, and the waiting feels like respect. I told Vivian the referral fees are not acceptable. I told her this is not how our family will work. I appreciate the sentence, I say. It stands up in daylight. She may call you, he says, careful not performing. Or she may not. Either way, I have groceries, I say, and he laughs, relieved by a sentence that refuses to turn into a scene. A florist leaves a square box with a ribbon that could tie a sail. The card has Vivian's precise hand. Thank you for your candor. No signature, as if the script signed itself. The roses are polite, all the same height, the color of a meeting that goes as planned. I move them to the end of the counter and put them in a jar that used to hold pickles. They look more like themselves there. At lunch, I meet Rosa on a bench near the river. She hands me a sesame bagel and a printout. Cedar Grove scrubbed some language on their website, she says. The internet keeps drafts even when people don't. Drafts are how truth gets caught, I say, and we watch a dog discover it can make geese nervous. 2 days later, Lena knocks. Not the quick, efficient tap I know. The other one, the one from college when she forgot her keys. She steps in and sees the roses, the binder, the tidy table. Something in her shoulders lowers a fraction. I started seeing someone, she says, and the sentence hovers until I realize she means a therapist. She drops into the chair with the good light. She asked me to describe you without describing your schedule. I couldn't do it for a full minute. It felt like I was cheating on something. On efficiency, I say. On being prepared. She rubs her knuckles the way she did before tryouts. She asked me when I started planning your future in my head. I said the day Dad put his ledger away and let you cross off the chores. I thought if I could be faster than sorrow, I could make it smaller. You've never been faster than a tide, I say, and she almost smiles. I told her about Cedar Grove, she says. She asked if I'd ever been inside. I said yes. She asked what I noticed first. I said the piano. She asked what I noticed second. I said the office. We sit with that for a moment. The radiator knocks once, a distant door closing on a floor above. I'm sorry, she says, not as a script, not as a gesture, not for the research, for the speed, for thinking a signature is a solution. I am not a form, I say. I know. She looks at the roses. Are those from Vivian? They're on time. I lift the jar so the stems realign. Do you want tea? She nods, grateful to be given something to hold that isn't an apology. The next week is ordinary in the way that lets you notice it. I catalog a stack of church newsletters from 1983. Rosa restores a water-stained yearbook. Harold finds his wedding announcement in the paper we forgot to check the first time. On Thursday night, I go to a lecture at the community center, Light in Memory, the flyer said. A retired photographer named Miles shows slides of the river in every season, the same bend under snow and pollen and August glare. Light keeps a ledger, he says. It tells you what a place owes and what it has already paid. Afterward, I wait my turn at the folding table to tell him the archive has negatives from a shuttered portrait studio if he's ever looking for a project. He asks questions as if each one is permission. He doesn't interrupt. When I tell him my name, he writes it in a small notebook and circles it once. A habit I recognize from teachers and plumbers, the mark you make when a thing needs attending to. On Sunday afternoon, Lena calls at the time we used to practice spelling words. Checking in, she says light, but not performative. I tell her about the lecture. She tells me about a client who wants to brand a fundraiser without mentioning the cause. We both groan. What are you making for dinner, she asks. Soup, I say, the kind you make to justify celery. She laughs. Send me the recipe and the photo of your counter after you chop the onion. Why? So I remember kitchens are real, she says, and the phone line carries the relief of being asked to imagine something honest. A small weather system passes. Vivian appears less in sentences, more in subtext. When she does materialize, it is as a suggestion, disguised as care, an article clipped from a glossy magazine about aging with style. A remark about the burden of errands that lands as lightly as she can make it. I answer what is asked and no more. She notices the boundary and decides to behave as if she invented it. At the archive, Miles stops by with a thumb drive and a tin of oatmeal cookies he claims came with it. You were right about the negatives, he says, setting both on the desk. The portraitist liked a left-side key light and a chair with a finial that looks like a bishop's hat. He also kept meticulous notes on his sitter's cardigans, I say, flipping through the log. Hudson Valley pink, Catskill green. Show me the green, he says. And we lean over a light box until a face from 1956 learns how to be backlit in 2024. When we break for coffee, he asks about the lecture I liked best this winter. I tell him about a historian who mapped vanished mills using only tax records and stubbornness. I like people who can build a bridge out of paper, he says. It's the only kind that keeps the original river. He doesn't ask if I live alone. He doesn't offer to fix anything. He says, if you need someone to carry the heavier boxes, I'm in the market for feeling useful. One box, I say, you can audition. Lena keeps calling. Some days she has nothing to report and calls anyway. Some days she arrives with a quart of strawberries and a willingness to sit while I sort. Once she says I'm learning the difference between being responsible for and being responsible to. I nod as if she has named a street we used to miss every time. Thomas stops by the archive on his lunch hour. He pretends he is there for the exhibit on the ferry that sank in 1911, but he is there for a sentence. I spoke to the lawyer, he says, standing in the aisle where we keep town reports. The forms are off the table. Tables are for reading, I say. He looks at the ferry photograph as if a boat could teach a person balance. I'm sorry I didn't catch this sooner. You caught it, I say, on time. He nods. Lena said you liked photographs of weather. I like proof that storms have shapes, I say. He shifts, then clears his throat like a man about to attempt something that could be read as sentimental. My grandfather used to say we only understand scale when we stand next to a thing that dwarfs us. He said the Highlands made him honest. He hesitates. We're taking a trip in the spring. If you came, no tour buses, no set schedule, you'd do your days your way. I'd like to look at a landscape with you that insists on being itself. I don't do buses, I say. I heard you the first time, he says. I fold the flyer I was straightening and slide it into a plastic sleeve. I choose my own pace. That's the point, he says, and lets the invitation sit where it belongs on a shelf within reach, not in my hands like an obligation. That evening I walk home by the river. The water has the late winter color of a thing that remembers better. A rower cuts a clean line near the far bank. On the path, a child in a red hat drags a stick along the fence, pleased by the raw instrument of it. I stop at a thrift store with a window display of misfit plates and a green wool scarf folded like a sentence waiting to be finished. I buy the scarf because it knows what to do with wind. Back in the apartment, I hang the scarf on the chair by the door. The roses have opened past polite. They lean into the jar like a group that has stopped performing. I boil water, rinse a cup, and choose a book with a cover the color of a calm sea. The radiator knocks once. I answer by turning the page. The quiet that arrives is larger than the room and not at all empty. It holds. The roses lean past their manners. The scarf waits on the back of the chair, like weather with patience. I fold 2 sweaters, a clean shirt, the soft shoes that forgive stares. The binder sits on the bookshelf with the town histories Calvin printed on the spine, not to travel, only to stand. I slide my phone into the inside pocket of the silk jacket. The lining remembers other departures. Lena knocks at 9 with paper cups in a small white box. "From the place you like," she says, setting down 2 cinnamon buns as if sweetness could keep the room steady. She looks at the suitcase and then at me. "Do you have everything?" "I have what I'm willing to carry," I say. She unwraps a bun, then leaves it untouched. "If you need anything, call me first. Not because I get to fix it, because I want to be the first to try." "That's a better sentence," I say. She lifts her chin, brave and careful at once. I'm practicing. We sit at the table that has learned my elbows. She tells me a short story about a client who wanted a press release without nouns, and we laugh like people who have graded papers. She looks around the room that made her and asks nothing about what it lacks. "I was wrong," she says, not. Grandly not for show. "I kept trying to turn you into an item on a list because lists make fear quiet. I'm trying something else." "Try breakfast," I say, and slide the plate toward her. She eats, half wipes her fingers, and stands to leave. At the door, she touches the scarf. "That green is you," she says. It knows where to look. A text from Rosa arrives after she goes, "Send a picture of something with edges." I send the radiator because it likes to be included. A message from Miles follows a thumbnail of the river under a pale sky and a line that reads, "Save room for light." The taxi smells like winter coats and last week. I watch the town unspool laundromat, barbershop, the brick building the bakery moved out of. On the train to the airport, 2 teenagers trade headphones and argue amiably about snare tracks. At the terminal, I stand in the small democracy of a security line and think about how neatly trays flatten us. Keys, wallets, shoes, the same inventory laid out by surgeons and single parents and men who have never learned to fold. A seat by the window, a book with a stripe of blue on the cover, a sky that decides to be clear. The plane finds altitude. Clouds turn from weather to sculpture and the engine hum becomes a kind of permission. I sleep for 20 minutes and wake to the slow geography of arrival, the shuffle, the polite impatience, the announcements that are the same in every city. The Highlands meet you with scale before they offer detail. The air keeps its hand open. A road winds like a sentence that doesn't waste adjectives. Glencoe holds its green the way old churches hold quiet. I walk a path beaten by boots that belong to other names. The scarf minds the wind without fuss. In a hollow where the grass has agreed to lie down, I stop. I take out my phone and open the memo with the red line. The screen brightens the way mirrors do in rooms that like themselves. Calvin says my name and the syllables come back to me unbroken. I let the next sentence begin, the one that always goes where I can't follow, and tap pause with 2 fingers. His voice waits mid-breath, not offended. The wind makes an inventory of the heather. A crow writes a black mark across the slope and leaves it there. Somewhere behind me, a couple is negotiating with a camera and a coat, the small choreography of being seen. My hands remember how to be empty. I put the phone away. Light moves along the ridge like someone underlining. The ground has the good sense to be firm. I stand where the path tilts and the view explains itself without pleading. The scarf lifts at the edge and settles again. I say my name once out loud to make sure the air has the right address. It does. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story. I'll see you next time as we continue exploring more journeys and lessons together.